The sports card hobby is wonderful, but just like any other industry, there's some bad actors in it as well. Today, we're going to tell you the top 25 ways to avoid getting scammed in sports cards. Hello, sports card investors, and welcome to another episode of Sports Card Investor University, where we are tackling the important topic of how not to get scammed in the sports card hobby. And I'm joined today by a very special guest, our VP of Product Development here at Sports Card Investor, Tyler Nethercott. Tyler, welcome to the show.
Hey, thanks, Geoff. Really excited about this topic. It's a very important one, and hopefully we're going to save a lot of people a lot of heartache down the road.
Yes, for sure. And the origination of this topic came from a post to Card Porn's Instagram account a couple of months ago when they wrote a really informative Instagram post about 25 ways that people should not get scammed in the hobby, things to avoid. I saw that post and I said, you know what? This is some really good advice to be giving the community. I asked them if we could take that post and turn it into an episode and also add some of our own ideas as well. They agreed, and so we have this great episode for you today. And of course, this episode is brought to you by eBay. eBay is here for the card collectors with a trick for every trade, like advanced tools for price checking with Price Guide Beta within the eBay app, and up to 50% faster listing with Image Scan. Learn how collecting just got smarter at ebay.com/trading hub. All right, before we get into this top 25 list, I want to acknowledge these beautiful pieces of art behind us. These are original paintings from J Geeker Studio, and through a special partnership with them, we have made these paintings, the LeBron, the Jordan, the Kobe, available for you to purchase and hang in your home. If you're interested in one of these paintings, you can go to sportscardinvestor.com and go to shop in the main menu, and that drop down will give you the chance to look at our art collection and shop these paintings. All right, T-Pott, are you ready to get into this list today? Are you ready to help everybody make sure they avoid scams?
Absolutely. Let's get into it.
All right, let's go. So the number one thing on Card Porn's list was to avoid buying raw, vintage, or semi-modern cards. What are your thoughts on this one?
You know, this is one that I don't necessarily entirely agree with. Really, you need to know what you're buying. And there are a lot of faked, a lot of trimmed cards from older eras. There was a period in the 90s where a lot of those high-end inserts were faked. So it's really just a matter of knowing what you're buying. Our friend Ryan at Breakout Cards has done a really good job creating videos on how to spot fake vintage baseball cards. He's working on a book for that. So go check out his channel if you're buying vintage baseball. And there's other great resources like blowout forums and things like that.
Yeah, and I'd say another thing on this front is a lot of this comes down to the value of the card. If you're buying cards that are in the dollar bin from vintage eras, then there's likely nothing wrong with them, even though the fact that they're not graded, they may just not be valuable enough to grade. And there are some vintage dealers that hate the idea of grading. Grading only came about in the hobby about 30 years ago. So when these vintage cards came out, there was no such thing as grading. But if you're going to buy an expensive card, if you're going after a card that is thousands of dollars, then regardless of what decade it's from, vintage, modern, ultra modern, you really want that card to be graded. All right, tip number 2 is to consider using an authorized group submitter if you don't want to grade cards yourself.
Yeah, 100%. And we obviously have our partnership with Joe Davis, Got Baseball Cards. Nice thing about their service too is that they'll actually inspect the cards if you want them to beforehand, just to make sure that they don't see any glaring issues. And they'll kind of let you know, hey, if we don't think this should be graded, we'll send it back to you free of charge. So that's a really a value-added bonus on that service. It
is, yeah, and there's plenty of good group submitters out there. T-Pott mentioned that we have one here at Sports Card Investor. You can find out information about that by going to sportscardinvestor.com and clicking on grading in the main menu bar. But regardless of whether you use our bulk submission service or another bulk submission service, it is a really nice way to get cards graded, especially if you're a little bit unfamiliar with that process. All right, their number 3 tip was always use PayPal goods and services. So meaning if you pay someone through PayPal, you get the option of sending money to a friend or paying for goods or services, and their suggestion is always pay for goods and services.
Yeah, don't pay friends and family if it's not a friend or family. At least do your research. If you trust the person, if they've got a high reputation score, they've got a lot of verified transactions through Instagram or something, maybe you can go that route to save a few bucks. But really, at the end of the day, it's a few percentage points. Most of the time, if I'm the buyer and they say, oh no, I'll only do friends and family, I say, no, I'll pay the 2.7% or whatever, through PayPal. And if they're really pushing back, that's a great indication that there's probably something funky going on.
Oh, 100%. Yeah. And the real difference here is that when you send money on PayPal via goods and services, PayPal offers you buyer protection. So if those cards don't ship or they don't arrive properly, you can actually get your money back. If you send money, friends and family, you are never getting that money back. So goods and services is the way to go. As T-Pott said, it costs a few percentage points, and that's why people don't prefer it, but it's the only way to get that type of protection. On top of that, you can also consider paying with your credit card, which again will create an additional fee, but paying with your credit card with goods and services on PayPal gives you the option of also doing a chargeback through your credit card company if something goes wrong. That's another line of defense. And that gets into actually the next tip, which was number 4 on their list. If you're having trouble getting a refund from eBay or PayPal, consider filing a chargeback for goods not received with your credit card company.
Yeah, just kind of a last-ditch effort. It may or may not work, but it's good to know that that could potentially be an option. You have to provide some, obviously, proof of fraud and things like that.
Absolutely. All right, number 5, be careful with eras like late 90s basketball, as there are a lot of fake cards out there. Consider buying graded cards if you are buying cards from these eras.
There are some awesome resources through Instagram and blowout forums, especially around this topic. And it's surprising to me. It's a lot of the serial numbered high-end inserts from the 90s, the PMGs, the Star Rubies, the Platinum Medallions, things like that, Playmakers Theater. These all got faked in the 90s or thereafter. So you can look around, you can poke around to see, does this serial numbered 18 of 100 already exist in somebody's collection, things like that. But buying graded here, definitely a really good idea, especially if you're paying a premium for a high-end player.
Absolutely. And that leads into number 6, which is always check the BGS or PSA serial number on their website before making a deal.
Yeah, and this can get really tricky if you're like in a last moment and you see something on eBay and you're like, wow, this is really low, I might want to make a play on this. Check the serial number first. I actually had one recently that I looked up and it was deactivated on PSA's website, and that can happen if it was a fraud. It can happen for other reasons too, but that's a good indication like something's going on here.
Yeah, and so what that means is that it's possible that you will come across a card that is in a PSA or BGS holder, so it looks 100% real and legitimate, but after they graded the card, they later determined that there was something wrong with the card, such as the card was a fake or an unauthorized card to be issued. And so they will retract that card from their database. That's why checking the serial number will let you know, is it still current in PSA or BGS's database.
And if you ever see it blacked out on a listing on eBay or on Instagram or something, insist that you see the actual serial number so you can verify it.
Before buying, for sure. Number 7, if buying into a break, do research on the breaker and determine if they're good to work with. Consider using major companies rather than random accounts on Instagram or Twitter with not a lot of followers.
I had a break that I actually bought off of eBay once, and it was a seller with actually high feedback, but the break never filled. They said, oh, the spots still haven't filled, and it sat for almost 2 months just waiting. And it was a more obscure product. I bought in some Pistons cards, but I finally had to go back and say I want my money back, and they were like, oh, don't request a refund. We only do store credit, and thankfully it was through eBay. I got my money back, but that was kind of a big hassle. I definitely recommend using reputable dealers, especially or breakers. Once you find one that you really like, stay loyal to them. That's a great thing to help keep their business running. Yeah,
and I if you're buying into a break, I hate waiting for it. One advantage of going with the bigger breakers is the breaks typically fill quickly. And so if you're buying into a break that day, chances are the break's going to happen that day. That's always a good thing. All right, number 8, educate yourself on how to spot fake PSA and BGS slabs.
There's some really important distinctions, and obviously a great way, again, is to look up the serial number, but Card Porn actually has some resources on their page. There's also some on blowout forums on the subtle differences between these fake slabs, and on PSAs, there's some numbering along the bottom, different things like that, to go out and check that. The BGS ones are a little bit trickier, and there have been some problems, so that's just something to really be mindful of. Yeah, absolutely. And there's a lot of noise that happens on the internet when fake ones are discovered. So just even doing a Google search for the serial number of the card may turn up a post on blowout forums or something of that nature about that particular slab.
All right, number 9, consider requiring signatures on higher end cards to ensure your items arrived as a seller. So what this means is when you ship higher end cards with signature required.
Yeah, I usually do this and I follow the same kind of protocols I would with insurance. Over $300, $400, $500, something like that. Make up your mind, and it kind of has a lot to do with how much are you selling too, because you're sort of hedging yourself against potential loss and theft. But getting a signature on a higher end card, basically ask yourself the question, how much would it sting if I lost this money from this sale? And then you can pay the extra $3 or $4 to get the signature required.
Yep, for sure. Number 10, review a potential buyer's feedback on eBay before accepting an offer from them.
Yeah, this one's an absolute no-brainer. You see a card for sale, it's a card you've been looking for, especially if it's like a one of one or some of these 90s inserts, other things like that. And you scroll down and you see that their seller feedback is 0 or 2, or they've got, it's really like, I've sold, thousands of items. Parker and our team has too. Like, it's pretty easy to keep 100% or 99.9% positive feedback if you just do what you said. So if you see negative reviews, especially in the last few months, I personally usually stay away unless it's really a card that I'm never going to find somewhere else.
Yeah, and this is true for both buyer and seller feedback. So if you're a buyer buying from a seller, as T-Pott said, you want to see that seller has a lot of really, really good feedback, a really high review. If you are a seller and you've got buyers, bidding on cards, making offers, you want to make sure that those buyers have a good reputation as well. A buyer with no feedback at all, there's a large opportunity there for there to potentially be no payment made on that card. And let me build on that one a little bit with an extra tip, and that is that when you're looking at recent sales comps, so if you're using something like, let's say, our Sports Card Investor app or Market Movers to look at recent sales or charts of a particular card, if you see something out of normal, if you see an outlier sale where a card's really gone up, you need to examine that sale and make sure that sale came from a buyer that had reputable feedback, and that it wasn't some brand new account where someone bought the card but they never actually paid for it, but the sale still showed up in data. Now, we do some screening of that with our card database, with Market Movers and the Sports Card Investor app, to try to filter some of those situations out. But no technology is ever perfect, and some of that can still get through. So it's always good on your own, if you're about to buy a card and you're relying on a recent comp, to check to make sure that comp looks legitimate and that it was a legitimate seller and a legitimate buyer with good feedback ratings.
Yeah, 100%. Good point.
Absolutely. All right, number 11, when going to a card show, do your research ahead of time and come prepared with the cards that you want to target. People who get the worst deals are often the ones who did the least amount of research.
This is yes and no, right? If you're going with a specific mission and you're like, hey, I've got this target list, I've got cards I've been watching, I've done my research, then absolutely bring that list and work the list, and don't get trapped. Don't go above the price. You know what your price is when you walk up and make an offer, right? But it's also fun to go and just walk around at card shows and sort of see what you're going to find. So there's not really a right or wrong there, but I think the point is well taken, that don't overpay for a card, have a plan, and don't get kind of caught in the moment.
And that's the difference between, are you going to a card show as an investor or are you going to a card show as a collector? Because if you're going as an investor, I think this tip very much applies. You need to have done your research beforehand, know who you're targeting, know how much you're willing to pay. If you're going as a collector, then you may just go and take everything in and pick up a few things here and there simply because you like them. But if you're picking things up simply because you like them, you're probably not as worried about the investment potential of those things. You're not as worried about the fact that you might be overpaying for not having done your homework. Of course, we try to make it real easy at Sports Card Investor to give you the tools you need to check prices on the go while at a card show. We offer both the Sports Card Investor app as well as the Market Movers app. Both should absolutely be downloaded to your phone, and you both are incredible tools for you to be using as you're walking around the card show floor looking at cards to price out.
Absolutely.
Yep. All right, let's look at number 12, which is be cautious about buying from platforms like Mercari or Etsy when powerful marketplaces like eBay exist.
I don't know if I really agree with this one at all. I mean, eBay is the best marketplace, and you're going to find the most there. I've found some deals on these other platforms before. Now, it can be a bit of a pain. There's more and more marketplaces cropping up. Trying to look at all of them can be obviously more effort, but you can check the seller feedback on these other sites too. And sometimes people do that for the reason that, I've got a bunch of cards from my childhood that I just found, but I've already got a seller store on Mercari because I do shoes and clothing and whatever. and I already have a reputation here. I don't have an eBay account, right? So I'm just going to list this stuff and try to sell it. You can find some pretty good deals on things from time to time, but again, check the seller feedback.
Yeah, absolutely. And also check to see what that marketplace's return policies are, buyer protection is, all that kind of thing. All right, number 13, rather than allow a buyer to cancel with a bad excuse, consider waiting for them to avoid payments and then report it to eBay so that they earn a non-paying bidder strike.
Yeah, so this is actually one of the areas where I would love to see eBay tighten up more. It would be great, actually, if instant payments happened. Mercari does that.
I know.
If you make an offer on a card or an item on Mercari, if the buyer or the seller accepts that offer, it instantly charges your card for the amount. Then you're not sucked into situations like this. But I've had cards actually that sat recently, one sat for 2 months, and for some reason the buyer strike never went into place. It was like a $6 card. I finally just canceled the order and relisted it, but I was trying to wait for that. So this would be nice if it could be tightened up.
Yeah, I agree. And it's eBay seems to be moving in that direction.
Absolutely.
The idea of non-payment strikes is actually a new thing eBay rolled out with earlier this year. But the more that can be tightened up, absolutely, the better. Yeah. Number 14, don't exclusively rely on people telling you what to buy. Do your own research and find a combination of what you like and what the market likes.
Yeah, absolutely. And we preach this nonstop all the time at Sports Card Investor. For some reason, there's still a misconception out there from some people that we are selling picks or that we tell people what to buy. That is the antithesis of what we're trying to do. We have a data tool that provides you with the data to make those decisions yourself. And what we try to do is educate and give examples of how we're thinking about things, how we're looking at the market quantitatively and qualitatively, and that's what absolutely everybody should be doing.
Yeah, and we will talk sometimes about the cards we're buying and selling, but we always do it from an educational aspect. Whenever we're talking about a card, we're always trying to explain the thought process that went behind why we decided to make the purchasing decision. The last thing that we want to do is have our audience just blindly run out and buy a bunch of cards because we happen to mention them. That was going on some last year, be quite honest, and we have taken extra steps to try to prevent that type of thing from going on because it's really important to us that people do their own research and make their own educated decisions. And guess what, guys? We're not always right. No. So you bet on yourself. Don't bet on what others tell you to do. Number 15, don't worry about FOMO. One of the easiest ways to overpay. Fear of missing out. It drives a lot of the crazy price spikes that you see sometimes in the hobby. Be careful about that.
Yeah, FOMO is real. It's real outside of sports cards. It's real in everything, and that's where marketing gets you into that FOMO mindset. If it's a new product, wait until it's cooled down. Unless it's like a card you've got to have for your collection or something that just came out, some one of one, and you may never see it again. Sometimes you have to make a play, but otherwise, let the hype cool down. Don't buy the first PSA 10 that hits the market. Things along those lines. Just be patient and wait for things to come around and cool down a little bit.
100%. It's some of the worst deals that I've done personally in the sports card world is when I was buying certain cards as prices were quickly escalating and then they hit a peak and then fall sharply back on the other side of that peak. Don't fall into FOMO. Number 16, buy the card, not the grade. Sometimes a PSA 8 looks much better than the actual grade itself.
So this can be easier said than done.
Yeah.
And I mean, frankly, yes, I've had 8s in a slab. I've had 8s in my hand that I sent off and they came back in 8 and I'm like, man, I just thought this looked like a really good card. That kind of goes to show you, in a sense, the absurdity of the premium on a PSA 10 or something, because to the naked eye, the card is absolutely beautiful no matter what, especially if the centering's good and the corners aren't all dinged up. Now, that being said, if it's an investment piece, buying a stellar-looking 8 in a slab isn't necessarily going to help you get more money for that, unless you're going to.
A nine's always going to outsell it.
So the
nine's always going to outsell it.
The number matters as much as you might like to think otherwise. But that's why that's one of the reasons why you send it off to the grading company first, to get it authenticated, encapsulated, and for them to certify a grade on it. So they're supposed to be the experts, and that's why people pay the price they do for it.
Yeah, again, it kind of comes down a bit to collecting versus investing. If you are collecting a card and don't necessarily care about the long-term price appreciation, then go for the card that looks the best to you, that appeals the most to you. If you're investing, then that grade matters because a PSA 8 is never going to outsell a PSA 9, no matter how good that PSA 8 looks compared to a PSA 9 of the same card.
Right.
Okay. Number 17, ask questions if you don't know. The hobby is generally a very helpful place, and there are plenty of folks out there willing to help.
Yeah, 100%. This is the best part about the hobby, in my opinion, is just the community. I've met so many people and actually made like friends on Instagram and through Discord, just through this very topic. You get in there, you can learn. Join our Discord. We have thousands of members now and great moderators. There's all kinds of channels for whatever you want to talk about. And there's great resources, and obviously the series that we're doing here is another effort to try to help educate people.
Absolutely, yeah. We put these videos out every Thursday, Sports Card Investor University, and the Discord that T-Pott mentioned, you can get to that by going to the sportscardinvestor.com website and going to Community in the main menu bar, and there you can find a link to our Discord as well as our Facebook group. Both are completely free, and both are full of tens of thousands of people who will help you out, answer questions, etc. All right, number 18, listen to your gut. If something feels off, don't do it.
Yeah, 100%. I mean, this just is like anything that seems too good to be true probably is too good to be true. Rare instances, maybe not. You know, sometimes you make a lowball offer on a best offer and it gets accepted. That may be different, but auctions that are ending, cards that have been relisted over and over again, pay attention to that stuff. Just trust your instincts.
Yeah, 100%. Number 19, don't be embarrassed if you think you got scammed. Ask questions rather than doing nothing. Again, the community is very helpful.
Yeah, overall, people are great about this. There are a handful of jerks who seem to just revel in, making fun of people for getting scammed, but literally, that's kind of sometimes the price of admission that happens to a lot of people. Again, that's why this post by Card Porn is very useful. It's why we're reiterating it on this channel, is to try to help protect against that. But there can be some great resources in the community to help you get your money back. If a card was stolen, there have been cards that have been found and tracked down, and you can get legal involved in that, the FBI sometimes. So just stay plugged into the community, be humble, admit you made a mistake, but most importantly, learn from it if you do.
Absolutely. Number 20, be patient. Rushed decisions can lead to mistakes.
Yeah, if you happen to flip open your phone, at midnight or 1 a.m., you're laying in bed. This is a time when Harvard says that people make the worst decisions.
Yeah.
And it's why a lot of cards sell. It's why a lot of auctions end at night. You're sort of in the wrong frame of mind. You see this card that you didn't know you were even interested in, suddenly it's got 60 seconds left on it. And you're like, this is really low. I'm going to make a play on this.
Yep.
Read the title, read the description, check the serial number. Don't impulse buy it. I've had that, early on when I was buying cards on eBay, I had that burn me a couple of times.
Yeah, I got burned on it not too long ago. Honestly, I was bidding on one particular auction, and then some other items were suggested to me, and I clicked over, and it was some sealed wax products that I was like, they were ending in 50 seconds, and I was like, oh, that looks really cheap, and so I put in a bid and won the auction. And then after the auction ended, I went and checked recent sales of that item and realized that I had just overpaid by a couple $100 as to whether that item, on that particular item, if I had simply checked comps, in the minute before and that type of thing, it would have been fine. But I fell into the last minute oh, that looks cheap, I'm gonna make a bid real quickly, and didn't do my research. And of course, I definitely know better. So that was definitely a silly mistake on my behalf.
Now, if you're a seller too, a great tip here is if you have a damaged card, best practice, eBay or any platform, is to put something like read or see description in the title of the card to make sure that whoever's buying your card sees it, because otherwise they might go, oh, I didn't know there was damage. Worst case scenario, you pay the shipping and everything, and then they request a return. That was one of the scenarios where the seller didn't put that in the title. The card looked good. They had both sides. I bid on it the last split second, and then I went to the description. It's small font. Note, there's a ding on the back or a scratch you can't see in the photos or something, right? So just be honest if you're a seller about that as well.
Yeah, for sure. All right, number 21, buy what you can afford. Don't overextend yourself just to buy cards.
I mean, no brainer here, right? Absolutely. You're not gonna, want to go bankrupt investing in cards, buying cards. Keep your priorities intact and be smart about that.
Yeah, for sure. Number 22, don't assume someone isn't a scammer because they're nice. That's how they get you.
Sometimes that's how they get you.
Sure.
I'm gonna flip this too and say, don't assume someone's a scammer because there's something you don't like about them, or because there's something you might have heard about them. Do your due diligence and make sure that you know them to be a scammer. And again, kind of have good dialogue with them if you're gonna have an issue.
Yeah, absolutely, absolutely. Be careful out there. Don't assume the worst, but also don't assume the best. Just do your homework. Know who you're dealing with. Number 23, create a paper trail of transaction receipts and screenshots when making a deal to better protect yourself if you need it.
Yeah, this is great. And this is also great if you want to submit something to like one of the anti-scammer groups or other things like that, to have that proof to then demonstrate, look, somebody really did, they done me wrong in this case, and I don't want anybody else to get hurt by them. So that helps the broader community too, just saving all that stuff. If you need to go file a chargeback or you need to go to eBay or something, all of that's definitely going to help.
Yeah, for sure. And number 24, don't deal with known scammers.
Yeah, and that goes back to like, use the resources that are available. Facebook has big groups for scammers. Card Porn posts a lot of things weekly on their page about bogus eBay sellers and other things, and they provide the screenshots to show like, look at, somebody's getting the runaround, buyers and sellers. So sometimes those people need to just sort of be forced out of the game, so to speak.
Yeah, 100%. Number 25, if it seems too good to be true, it's probably a scam.
Yeah, I mean, we touched on that earlier. Not a lot more to say about that.
Yeah, for sure. A few bonus tips. I've got a couple of additions that I wanted to add to this list that I think are really, really important for everyone to know. First of all, whenever you're buying an item, whether it's on eBay or somewhere else, look at the listing details very, very closely. Look at the title very, very closely. People are constantly doing things like putting PSA 10 ? In the title. So if you search for a PSA 10 card, it will come up in the search results. And if you don't actually look to see that, oh, it was actually a PSA 10 ? And you don't look at the photos, you may think you're bidding on or buying a PSA 10 card when you're not. It's just a card that inserted itself in there. I've seen people do this a lot as well with listing base cards as silver cards. This one's real common. And the reason they think that they can do it, because the actual color of a base card in a lot of sets, like for example Prism or Select, the actual color of the card is silver, but it's not a Prism silver or a Select courtside silver unless it is the actual silver refractor. And of course the silver refractor is far more valuable than the base card, but you really have to be careful of that. The best way to tell in that example is to look at the image of the back of the card, and if the word Prism appears in an italicized font on the back of the card, I'm using Prism in some of the more popular Panini sets here as an example, but if the word Prism appears on the back of the card, that means that it is in fact a refractor card, so it probably is the silver variation that you are in fact going for.
Yeah, same thing with tops. It'll say refractor, it'll say something on the back. There are cases, this kind of goes back to assuming the best about people too. There are cases where somebody's newer and they think they have a silver because they don't know the difference. They're like, oh, it's a $25 card. No, it's a 25-cent card.
Right.
But yes, absolutely. That's one early days I also got burned on. I think a lot of people end up with that mistake.
Absolutely. And along those lines as well, watch out for grade modifiers. This is especially true for older cards, but it's PSA specifically. So what a grade modifier is if a card is, let's say, for example, PSA 8, but then after the 8, there's the letters OC in parentheses. OC means off center. There's other grade modifiers as well, like MC for miscuts, and there's ones for surface stains, and different types of things like that, out of focus. What this means is that in the example of a PSA 8 OC, it means that PSA evaluated the card overall as an 8. All elements of the card were pretty strong, except it's badly off center. Well, as opposed to giving the card a much lower grade, they decided to give it an 8, but call out the fact, give it a modifier that it's badly off center. This typically brings the value of the card down maybe 2 or so grading levels. So a PSA 8 OC may be worth around what like a PSA 6 is. However, some people will list these cards on eBay and they'll just simply put PSA 8 in the description. They'll never mention the fact it's an OC. You have to look at the photo and look at the grading label in the photo to see, oh, wait a minute, that card actually has a modifier.
Yeah, it's a great tip.
Yeah, so just be real careful whenever you're buying anything online. Look closely at the title, the description, but then look closely at the photos to verify.
Yeah.
All right, this has been a good episode. Anything else from your side, T-Pott?
I just have one thing.
Sure.
This is something I'm pretty passionate about. There's a lot of great internet sleuths. It's actually remarkable. Some of these people should be in the FBI. They're so thorough. Maybe they used to be, I don't know. But they do great research. whether it's trimmed cards, faked cards, resubmitted cards, stolen cards, scammers, awesome resources. The one thing I would say is, if you're one of those people especially, do not be a rash judge. Do not jump to conclusions because you think you've got the next post to share, the next sensational thing to put out. Create dialogue. Go to the person that you think is doing something shady, something scammy, and ask them about it. Try to have a conversation. Be human. Have the courage to have a conversation. Usually they will. I know I would if somebody had a problem, and try to talk to them about it. If you have the proof, the concrete proof that something is wrong, then pursue that and share it with the public. But once you've damaged somebody's name inappropriately too, especially if it was something they didn't actually do. You can take an example. Imagine if you went up to the top of a mountain and it's windy and you cut open a feather pillow and you just shake all these feathers all over the place, and then somebody says, now go back the next day or a week from now and try to pick up every last one of those feathers. It's an impossible feat, and that's what you do to somebody when you go out and you smear their name and they didn't actually do what you said. So just be diligent. Don't rush to conclusions, but definitely appreciate the people who are doing this work, because it's really valuable, and it helps protect people. Yeah, a dialogue is always a great thing. I think a lot of people in the hobby are open to talking. Not everybody is going to agree, but if you reach out and have a dialogue with somebody, it's always a good thing. And maybe you find out that they are in the wrong, or maybe they don't want to respond, but that further proves your case. Yeah. Well, this has been a great list. Thank you, Card Porn, for putting this together and allowing us to share this. Hopefully you guys have found this really informative today. If you have, please subscribe to this channel, hit that bell icon, as we're continuing to bring you new Sports Card Investor University videos every Thursday to teach you about all aspects of the sports card hobby. And check out this awesome artwork from Jay Geeker Studios. It's pretty impressive back there, by going to sportscardinvestor.com and going to shop in the main menu bar. All right, that is it from here. We're signing off. Thank you, T-Pott, for joining. And thank you for watching. We'll see you back soon with our next episode. Take care.